This is a story, ultimately, about people like Jacob Rees-Mogg accusing Rishi Sunak of breaking his word, and Business Secretary Kemi Badenoch wanted to reassure the Conservative side that the government was still going to end EU supremacy, but simply changing how we're doing it. Well, the problem is, she flagged up all these changes in the Daily Telegraph rather than in the House of Commons, and was castigated by the Speaker of the House of Commons. Listen to what he's got to say here.
I know that it is highly regrettable that the government decided not to offer an oral statement on this matter yesterday. Given the importance of this announcement, on such matters, full engagement with Parliament and its committees is essential. Before I call the Chair, I will remind the Government we are elected to hear it first, not to read it in the Telegraph, and certainly not a WMS is satisfactory on such an important matter. Hence, that I would always say, I'm now going to call the Chair of the European Scrutiny Committee to ask the urgent question. Sir William Cash.
Mr. Speaker, will the Secretary of State make a statement regarding the question of her failure to come to the House before she made the written ministerial statement and the press article today in the Daily Telegraph?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'm very sorry that the sequencing that we chose was not to your satisfaction. I was...
Order. That is totally not acceptable. No. Who do you think you're speaking to, Secretary of State? I think we need to understand each other. I am the defender of this House and these benches on both sides. I am not going to be spoken to by a Secretary of State who is absolutely not accepting my ruling. Take it with good grace and accept it that members should hear it first, not a WMS or what you decide. These members have been elected by their constituents and they have the right to hear it first. And it is time this government recognised we're all elected, we're all members of Parliament, and use the correct manners. Secretary of State.
Mr. Speaker, I apologise. What I was trying to say was that I'm very sorry that I did not meet the standards which you expect of Secretaries of State, forgive my language. But what I have been trying to do is make sure that I provide as much clarity as possible. So I am actually very pleased to be coming to the House to speak. I'm very pleased to be coming to the House to speak on this issue. I have written a written ministerial statement to explain that yesterday we tabled an amendment to the retained EU law bill that amends the operation of the sunset in clause 1 of the bill. This is a technical change. It introduces a schedule to the bill of retained EU law that will be revoked on 31st of December 2023. The schedule includes around 600 pieces of legislation provided by nearly all departments and spans a huge number of policy areas. This is in response to concerns raised in this House and will provide the legal clarity and certainty that has been called for. I would like to reassure my honourable friend that the 600 pieces in the schedule are not the limit of our ambition, neither the beginning nor the end, but actually over the past year, as Whitehall departments have been working hard to identify retained EU law to preserve, reform or revoke, it has become clear that time constraints have led to the programme becoming more about preserving EU laws than prioritising meaningful reform. That is why we are proposing a new approach. And Mr. Speaker, had I known the intense excitement that the House would have had about this issue, I would have come running, running to make sure that these technical details could be investigated by all and sundry. But we are proposing a new approach, Mr. Speaker, one that will ensure ministers and officials are enabled to focus more on reforming rule and doing that faster. I'm pleased to say that the government has already reformed or revoked over 1,000 pieces of rule. In addition to the list of around 600 revocations in the schedule to the retained EU law bill, the Financial Services and Markets Bill and the Procurement Bill will repeal around 500 further pieces of rule, meaning we will have repealed not 600, but actually more than 2,000 pieces of rule by the end of the year. We are committed to lightening the regulatory burden on businesses and helping to spur economic growth. And our Edinburgh reforms of UK financial services include over 30 regulatory reforms to unlock investment and boost growth in towns and cities across the UK. Our regulatory reform announcement yesterday set out a long-term plan to reform UK regulation over the coming months. As a down payment on that commitment, we announced changes that will reduce disproportionate EU-derived reporting requirements that could save businesses around £1 billion a year. That will just be the first in a series of announcements the government will be making on reforming regulation to drive growth. And in addition to the schedule, the powers in the bill will still enable us to revoke, replace and reform any outdated EU laws that remain on our statute book by 2026. Mr. Speaker, this new approach will provide this space for longer term and more ambitious reforms. It will also, members of this House, I no doubt will be pleased to hear, mean fewer statutory instruments will be required to preserve EU laws that are deemed appropriate to maintain. I again would like to reassure my honourable friend that we will still fully take back control of our laws and end supremacy and the special status of retained EU law by the end of 2023. This will ensure we are ending the shadow statute book and inappropriate entrenchment of EU law concepts in domestic statutes.
Thinks that the issue was all about motivating Whitehall to do things fast. And he said it's hard enough to motivate Whitehall at the best of times. They're not necessarily coming into the office. They don't seem to be working with the efficiency one would like. Without a deadline, nothing will happen, and we will retain these EU laws for a long time. Well, whatever his plan to, quote, get Brexit done and get the EU out of the way, this isn't going to happen fast, and it's certainly not going to happen without the cooperation of the House of Commons. And one way to ensure that doesn't happen, I suppose, is to alienate the Speaker. That's been done very effectively here. I've never seen the Speaker so angry. Fascinating.